Welcome to Contractor Cuts, where we cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing a successful contracting company.
Welcome to Contractor Cuts. My name is Clark Turner.
I'm Jared Flo.
Thank you for joining us again this week. So today we are going to be giving a lot of stuff away for free. Yeah. So we usually, when we do an intake with a new potential coaching partner with us, we'll bring them in and we'll start asking some questions, start diving deep. Then we go into the first session of coaching and we start breaking down some critical areas to start unfolding. So today,
what's interesting about that is like people come in from all angles and all types, beginners and been in it for a long time, these issues, these problems, and they all end up boiling down to kind of the same thing.
Same handful of issues that
we start at the same spot with everybody.
Yep. And so today we're going to run everyone through that. So if you have never been to coaching, if you're not part of Alliance, this is some free coaching that you're going to get of how kind of our first session runs.
Can give you an idea of kind of yourself, where to start.
If you're a do-it-yourselfer and don't want to get into coaching, I get it. Try to do some of this stuff on your own. Listen to us. Reach out. We'll give you some resources as well. We like to kind of meet partners at where they're at and their needs. But what we're going to do is run you through start to finish session 1 and session 2 of coaching. Yeah. And this is how we start unrolling the ball of yarn that most companies have created in the background that's really stopping them from growing to the next level. And so we're going to run you through that. If you got questions, email us. We love to interact about it. Also, like this video. If you listen to the podcast, give us a review. We love to hear from you. Also, if you look at Jared on our YouTube video, he is fully sponsored.
Boom!
We signed a sponsorship deal where he's going to be wearing ProServe 360 gear
forever,
all year around. So he's got the hat and shirt on and everything else. So anyways.
I got earrings coming.
It's great. The shades, the shoes, the pants, the jumpsuit. It'll be great. Anyways, diving into this. When a company comes to us first, there is one thing that we say you have to bring to the table. And then there's 3 areas that we start in diving into how to see what's the problem in your company.
Yeah, which creates the base fundamentals.
Yep, exactly. So the first thing we say, listen, we're not going to teach you how to put 2x4s up and how to space them when you're framing a wall. Mm-hmm. We're not going to teach you how to create the product of a renovation, of a new home build, of your electrical panel that you're wiring in. If you're electrical, we're not teaching you construction skills.
We're not teaching you code. Yep. We're not teaching you any of that stuff. That's a skill that you have to bring to the table.
We help you on how to bid properly, how to get proper profit margins, how to get super efficient on the bidding process, on the execution process, on the invoicing process, and that's all the business side of things. What you have to do is be able to walk into a home build that you're doing or a kitchen renovation that you're doing and say, okay, I need to do X, Y, and Z. I know it's going to cost me this, and I think I should charge this, and be able to put that estimate together and give it to a client. Yeah. That's baseline. If you don't know how to do that,
that's a different school.
That's going to a different school. That's going through learning, getting your contractor's license and learning through all that sort of thing. That's apprenticing under somebody else. If you don't know how to do that part of it, you probably shouldn't be starting your company. You should be working for someone else to learn how to do that.
Absolutely.
But we'd love to talk to you anyways and kind of talk you through what you should be doing if you're struggling with understanding how to do that. Once you know that baseline of information, we can step in and help. And so there's 2 different clients that we step into. The first client is someone who is launching their company.
Fresh on the block.
They've been working for somebody else and want to launch something new, or it's we've seen a handful of investors and contractors coming together to form a company. Investors who are flipping homes and the contractor that's in the construction world, but they don't have a construction company to combine together. And so we launch them fresh. And so with those companies, we don't have to unroll the ball of yarn to figure out all the issues.
I've got a guy now who is in the process of retiring from his long-term career as a police officer and then is going to start a GC company. Yep. Right? So he's kind of fresh. He's kind of brand new. He's got some experience, but that falls into that category.
And so it's not figuring out the issues. It's putting things in place so issues don't happen as you're moving forward.
Or help prevent issues.
Exactly. So that's the first type of client. The second type of client is someone who's been running a company for 2, 5, 10, I think 20 years is our longest one that came to us after running a company 20-something years. And so they've been running their company, and they're at a spot where it's like, I've been working my butt off. I try over and over. I feel like I'm making money when I'm running my jobs, and I look and my bank account's at zero. And so I am maxed out on my time. I can't figure out how to make more money, and I don't know how to duplicate myself.
Yeah.
And so I'm running on the hamster wheel. It's been, 60, 70-hour weeks trying to get these jobs done just to start again on Monday and do it all over again. I'm making some money. I'm pulling down some cash for myself, but how am I going to retire?
I see the end game, and the end game is me continuing to lay tile.
Yep. Yeah. And those guys come to us, and it's a great spot and also a very difficult spot, because that's breaking an old dog with new tricks. And so saying, let's look at how you're doing things, and we're going to talk about the 3 areas that you need to dive into. If that's you, if that resonates with you, or if you're starting a company, we're going to talk through the 3 areas that you need to focus on that we find issues in almost every company coming in.
Well, and the reality about that is, like, I always say, if you have a really messy room and you want to clean it up, you actually have to make it more messy to get it organized. Yeah. Right. And so it's unraveling the ball of yarn. When we got somebody who's been running and gunning for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they've got a bunch of bad habits that they've just been doing, they thought they were doing the right thing. They weren't doing anything bad on purpose. It's a ball of yarn and a ball of yarn. And it takes time to create new standards. And outside of, you can create the new standards, but you still got the ball of yarn that you're going to have to strategically start taking apart till you can get it clean and clear.
Yep. It's like a Tupperware cabinet. You got to pull everything out before you can organize it and put it back together and put it in. So it does take a second. It does get messy, and it's not a get rich scheme signing with ProServe, because what you do is it takes months and months of strategic planning and growth in the right direction that a lot of times these guys, it's difficult because they've been running a certain way for 10 years, 5 years, 15 years. And now it's like, hey, you got to stop running like that, and you got to run this way. And so it's constantly, and that's what the coaching is great for, is constant correction when they're going back to that rut that they're used to. Saying, hey, let's get back here. Remember, this is your goals. These are what you're trying to do. And so that's kind of what we do with those type of clients. And so every single client that we work with is different. We break it down and we learn the company and work through figuring out their biggest flaws, and we start there first, and then we kind of round out the rest of the operation of the company. So going into it, there's 3 different areas. So
there is one piece of this that I want to throw in there. So you were talking about our what we do is not a get rich quick. There are plenty of programs out there like that. What ours is long-term sustainability is what we're trying to create, and to do that, what we do is help create a duplicatable a duplicatable process, replicatable jobs that they happen the same way over and over, so that you can bring other people in and they can execute that. So to do that where we start is to be able to build those things, you have to have some baseline fundamentals set up that I always call the moving your house from the built on sand to we're going to build the house on the rocks, right? And these are the foundational things that if we can get these in place, then you can start strategically creating the things to build something solid for long-term future.
If anyone's promising you to get rich by next month, then that's they're selling you a bunch of lies. What we are is get stabilized financially first, and then let's have a game plan to get rich over the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, to where you can sell the company or retire in 4 to 5 years and have a structured operation that doesn't rely on your brain and your brain alone.
Yeah, well, and one of the things, this is the last thing I'll put in, we'll move into the 3 things, but when we do our annual retreat and we send out kind of a questionnaire for the guys to answer, what I love most of the time, there's some outliers, but most of the time the questions of, is your stress more or less? It's always, I'm actually way less stressed because in the first year, I've gotten more financial stability.
All the unknowns are now known.
Did your revenue increase? In the first year, most of the time, no.
Yeah,
most of the time, it's about the same.
Yep.
Did your profit go up?
Yes.
Yeah, it went up.
4%. 5%.
How much time are you spending a week versus last year? Less.
Yep.
Right? So less time, less stress, same revenue, more profit.
How's your marriage?
Yeah.
How are you as a dad? How are you as a mom?
And that's so those are the things that we're not making you rich day one, but we're making you rich by the things that actually matter. You're getting time back, you're getting less stress.
Yeah.
And that's in the first year.
Yeah.
After that, that's when it starts tearing up and you start growing and developing.
Year 2, we want 50 to 100% growth in your company.
Yeah.
Year 3, it's duplicating that as well. So we want you to get rich, but the goal number 1 is stability with the current money you're making or not making, and figuring out how to start making money, and then moving into that. So
right.
the very first thing we dive into, and we'll cover these 3 first, is when you're looking at the finances of a company. The biggest issue, especially in construction, is most people are on a QuickBooks or a similar accounting system, or none, and they just hand their bank account to their accountant at the end of the year. But the people that are trying to do it right, those accounting systems are made for manufacturing and services rendered on the spot. Right, and so I'm selling a doodad, I'm doing that sort of thing, and so in QuickBooks, where contractors get the biggest bad information is that they're doing their work, and day one I'm invoicing a job for $20,000, right, and so I send an invoice $20,000. We're going to get the crews out there next week. We're going to get rolling on this job. Well, it's the 15th of the month. I roll into next month before I actually start the work on the job. QuickBooks says I made $20,000 of profit this month.
Right.
And so I'm looking at my numbers saying, well, we're rich.
Doing great.
I'm profitable month 2. I'm profitable. And the problem is next month I'm spending $30,000 on the stuff that
but I got no more money coming in.
And I might do one more invoice for $10,000
right.
or $20,000 again. I've spent 30 and invoiced for 20. So I've invoiced 40 total and spent 30, about right with keeping up with profitability. But month 2, I've spent 30 but only invoiced 20. So month 2, I'm negative 10,000. You're like, well, what's going on? I'm looking at my numbers, and I'm actually collecting work and getting invoices out, and I'm negative $10,000. And so the problem with QuickBooks and accounting systems like that is that they are only looking at invoiced and spent, and they're not looking and understanding the whole picture of what is actually the work being done and how profitable am I today and tomorrow and this week and this month. So we start by looking at how you do your accounting, how you do your invoicing, and we'll talk about that in a second. But
or if you do
any of that. And we also then, once you've been in the system, we start diving deeper into that and deeper. But really, it's setting up a couple different methods that we'll talk about later to be able to first be aware of exactly what's happening with your money and try to answer the question, I'm marking my jobs up 35%, and at the end of the day, I've got $0 in my bank account. I'm confused as to where all that money is going.
Right.
That's a very, very often asked question that we have to answer before you can start duplicating yourself. Before you know what money that you can spend on hiring someone, on marketing, on that stuff, how much money do you have? You got to understand down to the dollar that number.
Well, and if you need to purchase something and your verification of whether you can purchase it or not is go into your online banking and look at your bank account and say, yep, I got the money, buy it.
Yep.
If that's how you're functioning on a regular basis, you need to take a deeper dive look at this and go through some of the steps to make sure that because there's a high possibility that you might tank your account by accident.
So the first thing we're going to dive into is going to be the finances and how to structure that. The second thing we look at with companies that when they first start with that's a big issue is, and we dive into is, let's look at the process of how you bid jobs. We call it the project management process.
Right.
How I get clients, I bid jobs, I get it signed, I execute with the client, I bring on my subcontractors, my vendors, my labor. How do I execute on the job? How do I exit the job? And how do I invoice the job?
Right.
We have a 10-step project management process. And so a lot of times people have processes that work great for themselves, but it's not duplicatable because most of it is in your brain.
Right.
That's why when you hired that guy and it didn't work out, it's because he doesn't have what's in your brain.
Yeah.
And so it's dissecting looking at, okay, let's assess how you do things. Show me exactly what you do for your process, and let's show you a kind of a blueprint that we use in a process that you should use. Now let's combine them. Let's figure out and troubleshoot what you're doing and how it fits into a 10-step process that we've got laid out, and what you can continue doing because it's working well, what you need to change, and let us put our brains around assessing exactly what is and is not duplicatable.
Right.
We've seen a ton of these. We've gone through it with all sorts of companies, from home builders to service-based companies to GCs, and so understanding a duplicatable process and doing things that might feel wasteful to you today, but you're doing it to set up your project manager is the most important.
Future development.
So that's the second thing, is how you are you efficient on your job sites? How do you land jobs? How do you mark jobs up? How do you deal with labor? And then the third thing that we dive into is time management.
Yeah.
And we harp on this because this is nothing but self-control.
Well, and it is the reason why, one of the main reasons why, if you haven't been able to grow to the next level, this is probably one of the main reasons.
Yep.
In our industry, most people allow their time to be managed by somebody else, by the subs, by the crews, by the clients, by the vendors, by the emergencies, by the fires. But that's the thing that runs their time, and they're not in control of their own time. And so to be able to do the things necessary to grow, you have to take back ownership of your own time and organize it. Right? Find times to do all of those other things that are necessary to do, but what you'll find is that by organizing it, you actually have more time than you think.
And next podcast, we're going to talk about the hard things that we ask contractors to do to change. And one of those things that we'll get into is what Jared's talking about is finding that time. And the problem with contractors is that their time is literally worth money. If I show up to the job and spend time on the job, I can invoice you. And so saying, hey, I need you to spend time for free on working on your company to invest in your future. They say, that sounds great. I want to do that. I want to work on my company. I want to figure this stuff out.
Push comes to shove.
And then all of a sudden someone calls you for an estimate and you're in the truck and you're gone. And so that time gets pushed to next week, and then it goes to the next week, and it gets to the next week. And there's no accountability there without a coach where we're sitting there saying, hey, this is what you committed to do by next Thursday. Put it on your calendar like it's an estimate. You don't miss estimates. Don't miss this time, right? And so owning that time is what we're going to dive into.
Well, and something interesting, if you look at the order of those three things, finances, organization, and then time management. Finances, we start there because we need to know, are you going to shut the doors tomorrow? Are we in a spot that there is an emergency with finances that we need to deal with that? The other things don't really matter if the doors are going to be shut tomorrow, right? So let's find that out and see if we're in a really, really bad space, or are we okay and have some space to get things organized. Number two is reputation. Organization is associated with your reputation on jobs, right? If you're not organized, your clients are going to be frustrated and you're going to lose reputation. So if we get in and start analyzing how you're operating and doing things and realize that every one of your clients they love you, but they hate the experience, we need to curb that quickly. Right? And then number three is the time management. It's very, very important. But if those other two are falling apart, you're talking money and reputation there. Those two, you have to get those in order, right? And once you've got a little bit of stability in there, now let's work on the skill of time management, right? So there's a reason for the order of them.
Exactly. And this kind of ties into why we built ProServe 360 in our software. In our company, we kind of fell backwards into building this software internally in our construction company because we said, hey, these are the three issues that we keep running into, and we're able to identify those and self-identify that this we can't. And that's why we had literally 7 different softwares to understand each of these areas. So we built our software to be a project management, CRM, financial management system to where you can understand and manage your finances, you can understand your process and own your customer and vendor experience, and then you can also time manage, time block, task list tied to specific jobs and whatnot. So the software that we have is also
it's the backbone of all of these
with
things,
the
yeah.
process that we coach on. So it's a really cool system that we've put together to where it's kind of you got the tool and then you've got the instruction manual,
Yeah.
right? And so putting those together really makes it a solid base for construction companies.
That's right.
So let's
That's
dive
right.
into each of these three. So financial management, understanding finances. Jared, a first person comes in the door. We're in our very first coaching session. What are you looking for? What are you diving deep into? And what are the first set of things that you're looking at in this financial management of where people can start looking currently who are listening to this at their own financial situation?
Right. Well, a lot of people that come into us have the money in, money out mind frame, right? And especially some of the smaller ones, the one-man shows or whatever, might have a good ability to remember numbers in their head and know, okay, I've spent about this amount of money and blah, 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 right? But what they do is they have, okay, I've taken in $20,000 and my credit card bill was X amount of dollars. Okay, I'm profitable at the end, and there's no real aim or target. It's just a hope system, right? And so to be able to know that information, you have to be able to organize what's labor cost, what's material cost, and am I profitable? So that's one of the questions that I ask is, are you profitable? Do you know if you're profitable?
Yeah. I mark it up 35%.
Okay. How much profit are you making after the jobs?
Well, I'm in debt.
Right. Yeah. And so, okay, we need to find some clarity there. And this is something, because I'm a finance guy. I like numbers and all that stuff. I always look at it as, if I don't understand the numbers, I can't see. So I'm walking in a fog, hoping I don't trip over something.
No.
Right. And so we start with creating, what are your costs? What are your, let's, we can talk about job costs, but what are your other costs? What are you paying for? How much of your personal are you running through the company? Let's figure out and organize that. And creating systems where once a week, and sometimes when they first start, it might be a couple times a week to get things, kind of back in order if it's a real jumbled mess. But once a week going in and making sure that everything's tied where it needs to go. Payments are coming in and going and being tied to invoices and closing those out. And we look at some of those things when it comes to reports in your QuickBooks. Look at, accounts receivable, a profit and loss. Look at, those things help determine the health of the numbers. And the reason for the importance of those is twofold. One, if you don't understand your numbers, you can't make business decisions. Right? How do you know if you can hire somebody? Right? How do you know if you can afford to spend that or this or that? Most people look at their bank account, like I said previously, and go, yeah, I've got $100,000 in that account. Yeah, go spend it. But what they don't realize is that they actually wrote $90,000 worth of checks last week. So there's only 10 grand. Right? And the second one is, and honestly, one of the big ones that we work with a lot is, you're the owner of the company. You work really hard. You need to be taking a paycheck. You need to be getting some money. How do we make that happen? Even if it's, less than what you were expecting, it's set up as a system.
Let's put you on $2,000 a month. Let's start having a systematic way to increase your pay as we hit certain milestones, and be able to get you on a system to get paid.
That's right. Because, and this is something I say all the time, if I have nothing to be able to manipulate and dial in, right? If I start somewhere, I have something tangible that I can dial in and make better and whatever. So it's not fair, and that's a part of being a business owner, but it's not fair, it's not right to put in the sacrifice of your family and your time to be growing and running a business and hoping at the end of the day that there's enough money to take home some money, right? You need to set up at least a little bit that I know I've got X amount of money coming in. If there's extra, awesome, I'm doing a good job. But it's you have to. It's not worth it to hope you're going to make money.
So here's something that'll probably resonate with a lot of guys listening. If you're a one or two man show, if you are running it to where you understand every numbers of every job site in your brain, and you're good with that, and that's how you run it, don't come to us. Don't try to expand. Stay where you're at and keep making the money you're making, because you can manage this in your brain. But the problem is, as soon as you make that first hire, they don't have the same attention to dollars that you do. And if you don't have systems in place to manage and see this stuff, you're not going to see that they're missing and spending and losing you money. So a great example is when I was a one-man show, I was running and gunning. I knew everything in my head. I kind of had some Excel spreadsheets as well as QuickBooks to understand those finances. But if I had a job and I had $1,000 of leftover materials on that job, I'm taking my Saturday, because I didn't have time all week, to go get those and return them, because that's $1,000 in my pocket. When we had project managers come on, same exact job, when their head, it's like, there's some leftover materials there, and it gets taken by the haul-off guys. Like, oh well, it's one less thing I got to do. And so that's $1,000 lost that I didn't know about until I had ways to measure my materials and measure what I'm spending on labor, and hold these guys feet to the fire when it's go back work and stuff like that. If you don't have processes in place to measure that, which are unneeded when I'm a one-man show, but if you don't put them in place now, when you make that first hire, you will guarantee lose money if you don't have a way to measure this stuff.
One of the things that a different way of looking at that I really enjoy, if you're the owner and you hire a project manager, right, and you don't have systems in place and all the different stuff, you put that person in charge of $100,000 job, right? They're going to be able to invoice $100,000 by the time it's all done, which means your costs are going to be somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000. So pull out $70,000 in cash and give it to that person in a briefcase and say, spend it however you want. And don't spend too much. And I hope that you spend it wisely. And don't waste it. And
if
you wouldn't. Because it's your money. It's not their money. It's yours. So they'll spend it however, and they will do it frivolously. They will not go back for that $1,000.
Not maliciously.
Correct.
But I'm doing what you hired me to do and nothing more. And so with what you're saying, the systems that we see in place, realize this 2, 3, 4 months down the road when they're firing that person and possibly closing their doors because they're out of cash, they're in a hole, and now they're going to borrow money from a loan shark to be able to keep the doors open. And so if you can't see that today as what's happening today on my job sites, you are flying with your eyes closed. You don't know what's going on, and you're hoping for the best, and you're playing with fire because you're going to get burned at some point if you're hiring project managers.
Well, and the biggest, most successful companies in the world, and really any successful company, when they go to a business decision, could we do this? They go to the books. Is it a smart thing to do? Yeah, I think it's a smart thing to do. Can we afford it? How do you know? Right.
And guys justify it. Well, you got to spend money to make money, so we're going to spend $1,000 on Facebook ads. Well, you don't have money to spend. You're borrowing from your client to spend that money, and that is not the way to do business. Now, we need to make $1,000, set it aside, and be able to burn it. And that's the money you got to spend to make more money. And so understanding that and not just shooting from the hip with cash and spending is the biggest thing we got to rein in and help you understand, to where you could be on a tight budget and not act like the government and spend whatever you want to spend, and know that the money should be there at some point.
Right. Well, and that rolls over into the second category. Organization.
Processes.
Processes. Right. Your processes are the thing at a base level. Your processes are the things that you do that make you, that make your clients like you on their jobs. Why they say, no, I want Clark on my job. I don't want George, I want Clark. Why is that? What is it? Is it communication? Is it what are the things? And so that's the systems, the basic systems that you start with duplicating yourself. And then you dial those in with expectation processes that if you're going to spend money, Mr. Project Manager, here's how you do it.
The process will define how your product's delivered the same every time, and it defines how I guarantee that I'm making money on these jobs. Those are the two things that your processes are doing. And so the process that we put in place is, can I hire someone, a 25-year-old kid who's been as a project manager somewhere else for 2 years, and bring him in and help him deliver the same product at the same level I'm delivering today to my clients.
Right.
And most people say, just sit in my truck, watch what I do, and then are extremely disappointed by the results of that guy and end up firing him, letting him go. This guy's an idiot. And the truth is, he doesn't know the product that you've been delivering. He's delivering the product that he knows and kind of watched you how you did it and tried to take some notes on it.
Right.
So these processes that we put in place are to guard your product and your reputation, as well as understand where every penny's going and hold your employees accountable to where that money is being spent and not spent, at where we catch that stuff today, not in 2 months from now.
Well, and so when we're talking about somebody coming into our program at the very beginning, there are a few things that are just the absolute must, the very beginning of what we do. And that is what I call the 3 levels of accountability. You have to have accountability with your clients, whether there is clear, understood expectations of how a job is going to run, how I'm going to run, how they're going to run, how things are going to happen, if there's a problem, all of that type of stuff, which comes to our CEA, our Client Engagement Agreement. Yeah. Secondarily is your subcontractor agreement. Same thing, just with your subs. So now you've got a level of accountability between those two. And if you're a one-man show or a couple of guys, but you're still running jobs as the owner, the middle of that, the accountability is to you towards those people. I am accountable to, I told my subs that if they executed, I would handle them this way. I would get them paid like this. I told my clients that this is how I'll communicate with them, right? Then once it gets bigger than you and you hire on 2, 3, 4, 5 project managers, that accountability becomes your job expectation for your employees, right? So those 3 levels of accountability are where we start of, all right, here's our client engagement agreement that we have. As an alliance member, we're going to give that to you. Let's dial that in. Yeah. What makes sense for you, and what do we need to change for it to be you and not let's dial it in to be exactly who you are and what you wanted to say. Same thing with the sub agreement. Now let's get that implemented. That's the baseline of where we start with systems and processes.
If we're coaching you and we get to the financial side, most guys say, I would love to know my numbers deeper. Let's dive as far as we can. And it's kind of a phase thing. You can't do all of that day one. But understanding their numbers, we don't get a lot of pushback from.
Right.
When we get into processes and systems, we have, well, that works for y'all, but I'm going to do it this way. That's great. Okay, I'm going to put in writing that this is what we talked about, and in 2 months you're going to come and say, you're right, we'll change that. Yeah. And we'll talk about some of that stuff next on the next podcast of here are the 3 things that we get pushback the most from guys on. So we'll talk about that next week. But the problem with processes is people run their companies the way they think is best. And I get that, and it's worked for me up to this point. But also, there's a reason you're here for coaching, because what's worked for you to this point is not getting you to the next level.
It's got you to this point, and that's as far as it's going to get you.
And if you want to stay at this point, don't pay for coaching.
No doubt.
You don't need to go to the next level if you're happy with the way you're running things. And so breaking some of those bad habits, not because you have to today, but as you have to grow. And helping guys understand that and seeing that is really the benefit of learning these processes.
Right.
So the third thing that we go into every single time, and again, this is something that everyone commits to and wants to do also, but it really...
They love the idea of it.
And then you'll know by the 4th or 5th coaching session if they're committed or not, if they've got that self-control button or not. And if they got that gear, killer, it's going to be easy. If they don't, now we're coaching heavy on controlling
I've got guys that do this really, really well. They're kind of natural at it. And I also have, and honestly a lot more, that have specifically asked me to hold them accountable for this thing. Right? All the other things is great and whatever, and I appreciate it and it's helpful and whatever. I need accountability because I can't stay on track when it comes to time management.
Well, and the good part about our coaching system is in a coaching meeting, they should walk away with, here are the 2, 3, 4 things that you're working on. And next coaching meeting, I'm going to ask you about them and they better be done. And we'll give you 3 to 4 more things you should be working on. Let's bite-sized pieces on everything for growth for you. And so now there's actually a deadline for guys, which is all they need is, all right, well, next Tuesday, Jared's going to be asking me about, did I get this thing completed? Did I write out the system of how I'm doing an intake with the new client? Did I write out this?
And it's not a demeaning conversation, but a lot of times in that, okay, so here were the 3 things. Did they get done? No. Okay, help me understand why.
Yeah.
And it's not to demean them. But help me understand why, because I need them to see that they weren't taking control of their time, which is why these things didn't get done.
Yep.
Which is fine. That happens. But the longer you allow that to happen, the longer you stay the same.
Yep.
That's a conversation I have with guys all the time. Like, it's okay for you to take a month to execute the things you said you were going to do on May 1st.
Yep.
It's okay. But you're elongating the amount of time. Your increase is going to lower, right? It's going to go up, right? You're progressing.
Yeah.
It's just going to be slow.
Well, a good example, a few weeks ago, we had Bruce on the show with C3CC. And he's a guy that you give him 3 tasks and he comes back with 6 done.
Yeah.
He's like, I did it. I killed it. I did this too. I also completed this. And so someone like him rises to success quickly.
Right.
Because he sees the bigger picture and the sacrifice today of not going to that estimate because I'm working on my company on these specific things that I know I need to get done.
Right.
Then they will get there quicker. And if you don't have that time, if you're running too fast and you just can't do it that quick, no problem. It's going to take you a year to 2 years to get there, as opposed to some guys getting there in 6 months.
Well, and especially a guy who you're executing labor.
Yeah.
Right? You're painting walls.
Swinging the hammer guy.
That transition from that to a project manager, and you're no longer painting walls and swinging hammers, is really difficult.
Yep.
It's a hard one to make.
2 different jobs.
Because, it always pulls you back in.
Yep.
Always, because, and so when Bruce came to us, he was not executing jobs. He had a couple people working for him, right? And
he had labor guys.
He had labor guys,
he had
right?
employees.
So it gave him the space.
Yeah.
But it's very, very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
Which is why the time management piece for the guy who is painting walls is vitally important, because you'll never get out of that role.
Yep.
I've had guys that have been with me for years, and they're still in that role, and they really want to move to the next level. They really want to get out of the truck, and they're still in there because their time management, they just don't take the time to do what they have to do.
Yeah.
Right?
The safe part of our program too for guys, and again, I'm not trying to sell it. We're just talking about how you got to plan this growth. And the safe part that we give them, we've got this 280 plus list of step by step from filing your articles of incorporation all the way through level 4 of duplicating to different cities, right? And so, we've gone to different cities ourselves. We understand the process in every single step from starting as a one-man show, and we've made a lot of the mistakes on the way. And the great part about what we do is say, listen, don't worry about exploring other cities that you want to start going to. I know you're an entrepreneur. I know that's a lot of fun.
Right.
And your ADHD brain wants to start 3 different cities and run with it. I get it. That's fine. What we need are these 4 things, which are going to lead to these next 3 things, which in 6 months from now, if you stay on this course, we're going to have that conversation. And so don't worry about anything else. You got 3 things to accomplish to go to bed by Friday and sleep knowing that you've got progress in your company forming. And so that's the step-by-step coaching part that I think why I would join ProServe if I was if I wasn't already on this side of it.
Yeah, if somebody looked at me and say, execute these 3 tasks.
And that's it.
Don't worry about all the rest of it. Like, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's understand your numbers first. This is what we got to do that. Let's start building your process. Here are the 2 things you got to do to get that rolling. And here's how we start owning our time. This is how we're going to start building space to work on the company and to be efficient with your time to where you're making the same amount of money with less hours spent on the job sites and running around.
Yeah.
So
and when it comes to time management, there's a lot of different tools and skills that you can learn that we teach of using a calendar system, time blocking. There's all sorts of skills and tools that you can use to help manage this stuff. But again, the goal is you become in control of your time. You get to choose when you spend your time on what.
Yeah, we've got a 5-day schedule of how a project should run and what you should be doing every single day. But we say, listen, we're not going to implement day one all of these changes.
Yeah.
Let's find 2 hours a week right now that you can sit down and start working on the company. When's a good time? When are you the least busy? Let's do it early in the day, because when you do afternoons, you end up putting out fires and missing it. And so we kind of start with bite-sized stuff as opposed to trying to change everything, because that never works.
Yeah.
It always goes
And
back.
normally, the guys that first start with me, if they're on a level that they meet with me once a month or every other week, typically that meeting ends up being on one of those time block times, because that's the space that they've given to work on their company, and that's where we have those conversations a lot of times.
Next podcast, we're going to talk deep dive into the 3 things that when we sit down after this first meeting,
most pushback.
We sit and here are the 3 things we're going to be working on. They understand. They want to go. We want to run. Meeting number 2, second coaching session, third coaching session, somewhere in there. We say, okay, here are the first things that we're changing that we need you to start changing how you do things. And I don't know a single company that hasn't given us pushback on all 3 of those.
Yeah.
And I also don't know a single company that has changed to do these 3 things that haven't said in retrospect, that was a great idea. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I pushed against it. So next podcast is going to be a good one, because it's diving into the stuff that you think you're doing right, but we know we've got the evidence and we're coming with receipts of why you're doing it wrong.
Right.
So it's going to be a good one. Any questions, please email us. Both Jared and I would love to talk to you. Go to our website, hit the contact spot on there, ProServe360.com or ProServeAlliance.com. We'd love to talk to you guys on there. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
See you next week.
Bye.